You are listening to Serve, Lead, Scale, from spiritual fumes to strategic expansion. I am Bishop Dr. Loretta Sanders, Senior Pastor, Leadership Architect, and the person who is going to tell you what no one else in your circle has been willing to say. You were not called to survive your ministry. You were called to scale it. Every episode, we build. Let's go. Your team smiled in the meeting. They agreed with the plan. They said all the right things. And the moment they walked out of that room, the real conversation began. You just do not know it yet. Last week, I told you that the politeness in your team meetings may be the most expensive problem your ministry has. Today, I am going to prove it. Acts 5, verses 1 and 2. But a certain man named Ananias, with Sapphira his wife, sold a possession, and he kept back part of the proceeds, his wife also being aware of it, and brought a certain part and laid it at the apostles' feet. Most people read this story as a story about dishonesty, about greed, about a couple who lied to God and paid the ultimate price. Today, I want you to read it differently, because before Ananias and Sapphira lied to Peter, they were responding to something, and that something is living in your organization right now. Ananias and Sapphira did not invent deception. They responded to a culture that made honesty feel more dangerous than a lie. But before I take you into Acts 5, I need to define something that most ministry leaders have never had language for. Because what you call harmony in your organization may not be harmony at all. Genuine harmony in a team is not the absence of disagreement. It is the presence of trust. It is a room where someone can say, I think we are making a mistake, and that sentence is welcomed rather than punished. Where a volunteer can say, I am struggling, and that admission leads to support rather than sideline. That is genuine harmony, and it is rare. Artificial harmony is what happens when a team has learned through experience that certain truths are not welcome, that disagreement has a cost, that honesty is risky, so they stop offering it. Not because they stopped caring, because they calculated correctly that silence was safer than speaking. There are 5 ways artificial harmony shows up in a ministry, and I need you to sit with each one honestly. The first is the unanimous vote. When every decision passes without a single objection, you do not have alignment. You have a room full of people who have learned that objecting is not worth the cost. Think about the last leadership vote that passed without discussion. Was that because the plan was genuinely that good, or because the room had already learned that raising a concern takes more political capital than most people are willing to spend? Genuine alignment sounds like questions before agreement. Artificial harmony sounds like silence before applause. The second is the post-meeting debrief. The real meeting happens after the meeting, in the car, in the hallway, in the group chat that does not include you. The decisions you made in the room are being relitigated in the parking lot, and you are the last to know. Trust, they are taking place. I have sat with senior pastors who were genuinely shocked to learn what their teams were saying in private conversations. Not because their teams were malicious, but because the formal spaces never felt safe enough for the real conversation. The real meeting was happening somewhere else, and the leader was making decisions based on the meeting that never told the whole truth. The third is the vanishing volunteer. They do not quit loudly. They just quietly step back, reduce their hours, become unavailable, until one Sunday they are simply gone, and no one can tell you exactly when it happened or why. The volunteers who disappear without explanation are usually the ones who cared the most. People who do not care do not bother with a quiet exit. They just stop showing up. The ones who quietly reduce their hours and become unavailable have usually been trying to tell you something for months. The exit is the final communication after every other form of communication failed to land. The fourth is the performance review surprise. Everything seemed fine until it was not. The leader had no idea because no one told them, not because people did not know, because people did not feel safe enough to say. The fifth is the energy drop. The team executes but no longer innovates. They do what they are told but have stopped bringing ideas because the last idea they brought was dismissed, and they remember exactly how that felt. Now I want to show you the 3 specific conditions that create artificial harmony in an organization, because every one of them is a structural decision, not a personality problem. Condition 1, the punished dissenter. The first condition that produces it is a history of punished honesty. Someone at some point told the truth. They raised a concern. They pushed back on a decision. And what happened to them after that moment became the lesson every other person on the team internalized. If they were sidelined, everyone learned that dissent has consequences. If they were ignored, everyone learned that honesty is pointless. If they were publicly corrected, everyone learned that the meeting is not a safe place for real thoughts. One moment of punished honesty teaches an entire organization to go quiet. And that silence, which you might read as peace, is one of the most expensive things your ministry owns. Here is what that looks like in a ministry setting. A department head raises a concern in a leadership meeting about an upcoming program launch. The senior pastor listens and then proceeds exactly as planned without acknowledging the concern. No follow-up, no explanation. The program launches, and in that single exchange, every person in that room learned something that was never said out loud. Concerns do not change outcomes here. From that moment forward, concerns stop being raised. Condition 2, the rewarded performance. The second condition is a culture that rewards appearance over reality. When the leader celebrates the person who always seems fine, always has it together, always reports good news, the team learns what gets praised, and they begin to perform it. Not because they are dishonest by nature, because the reward system told them that the performance of health gets more recognition than the reality of struggle. And this is exactly what happened in Acts 4. Barnabas sold a field and laid every penny at the apostles' feet. The community celebrated. The culture rewarded total sacrifice. And in that charged atmosphere, Ananias and Sapphira faced a decision that no one in a healthy culture should ever have to face. They could tell the truth and risk being seen as less committed than Barnabas, or they could perform the expectation. They chose the performance, and it destroyed them. Condition 3, the unavailable leader. The third condition is leadership that is too busy to be honest with. When the leader is always in execution mode, always moving, always managing, always solving the next crisis, the team learns that there is no space for a real conversation. So they stop initiating one. They protect the leader's bandwidth. They filter what they bring. And the leader, operating on curated information, makes decisions based on a version of reality that no longer exists. Here is what unavailable leadership looks like in practice. A team member needs to tell you that a key volunteer is burning out. They send 3 emails over 2 weeks. You respond to none of them. Not because you do not care, but because your inbox is a crisis zone and their message did not register as urgent. By the time you look up, the volunteer is gone. And the team member who tried to tell you has learned one permanent lesson about what kinds of information are worth surfacing to leadership. Artificial harmony is never created by a dishonest team. It is always created by a structure that made honesty too expensive to offer. And the price of artificial harmony is never paid in one moment. It is paid slowly. in talent that quietly exits, in ideas that were never voiced, in problems that were never surfaced until they became crises, in a congregation that can feel, even if they cannot name, that something beneath the surface is not right. Now, let me take you back to Acts 5, because what happened in that room tells us everything about what happens when a culture rewards performance over truth. Before we judge Ananias and Sapphira, we have to understand the room they were sitting in. Acts 4 tells us that Barnabas, a respected, trusted leader, had just sold a field and laid every penny at the apostles' feet. The community celebrated. The culture rewarded total sacrifice. And in that moment, Ananias and Sapphira faced a decision that was shaped not just by their own character, but by the atmosphere around them. They could tell the truth and risk being seen as less committed, or they could perform the expectation. They chose the performance, and it killed them. Here is what most leaders miss about this story. Ananias and Sapphira's sin was not simply that they lied. It was that they brought a performance into a community that required truth to function. Peter's response: "Why has Satan filled your heart to lie to the Holy Spirit?" was not just about their individual deception. It was about what their deception would have done to the entire culture of the early church if it had gone unchallenged. One accepted lie teaches the entire community that performance is permitted. And once performance is permitted, you no longer have a community, you have an audience. And audiences do not build ministries, communities do. Acts 5, verse 11 tells us that great fear came upon the whole church. And immediately after, Acts 5, verse 12, great signs and wonders were done among the people. The early church became more powerful after the confrontation of deception than it had been before. Not because God rewarded fear, but because a culture of truth, enforced and protected, is the only environment where genuine power can operate. Artificial harmony is spiritually as well as organizationally expensive. Now, I am not going to leave you with only the diagnosis because it is not permanent. It is a structural problem, and structural problems have structural solutions. Here are 3 things that begin to break artificial harmony in a team, and you can start any one of them before this week is over. The first is what I call the welcomed contradiction. The next time someone in your team pushes back on a decision, before you respond to the content of their pushback, say this: "Thank you for saying that." Not because you agree, but because you are publicly modeling that dissent has a welcome in this room. One moment of welcomed contradiction begins to undo months of learned silence. It signals to everyone watching that the culture is changing, and people are always watching the leader's response to disagreement more carefully than they are watching anything else. The second is the structured truth invitation. Stop waiting for your team to volunteer the hard information. Build a structure that asks for it directly. Before every major decision, ask the room, what are we missing? What are we afraid to say? What would we tell each other if there were no consequences? These are not rhetorical questions. They are architectural ones. They build a door in the wall that silence built. The third is the public acknowledgement of your own limitation. The moment a leader says in front of their team, "I was wrong about that," or "I did not see that coming," or "I need you to push back on me more," they do more to dismantle artificial harmony than any team building exercise ever could. Because what the team has been waiting for, sometimes for years, is proof that honesty is not only safe in this room, it is modeled from the top. Your team is not waiting for a perfect leader. They are waiting for an honest one. They have watched you carry the weight of this ministry, the Sundays, the crises, the decisions, the weight of it all, and they have stayed. That loyalty is the raw material of a genuine community. But loyalty without honesty is just endurance, and your team deserves more than endurance. They deserve a leader who is building the kind of room where the truth can finally breathe. That is what this episode and this entire series is building toward. Not a polished organization, a real one. So here is what I want you to walk away with today. Artificial harmony is not a people problem. It is a structural problem, and it is fixed not by demanding that your team be more honest, but by building the conditions where honesty is safe enough to offer. Artificial harmony is not a people problem. It is a structural problem, and it is fixed not by demanding that your team be more honest, but by building the conditions where honesty is safe enough to offer. Before your next team gathering, I want you to do two things. First, think of the last time someone on your team brought you a problem rather than a solution. If you cannot remember, that is your answer. Second, think of the last time you publicly acknowledged and thanked someone for telling you something difficult. If that moment does not exist, your team has already learned what honesty costs in your organization. Here is your reflection question for this episode. Which of the three conditions that create artificial harmony is most active in your organization right now? The punished dissenter, the rewarded performance, or the unavailable leader? Just name it. You cannot fix what you have not accurately named. The Ministry Capacity Micro Audit at youcanfaith.com/leadership includes a specific section designed to measure the psychological safety in your team, which is exactly where artificial harmony either lives or dies. If you have not downloaded it yet, this is the episode that makes it non-negotiable. Download it free at youcanfaith.com/leadership. That link is in the show notes. Next week, we are going to talk about what it actually looks like to fix it, how to delegate without abdicating, how to release authority without losing accountability, and what Moses learned when he was the only person in Israel who could not see that he was the bottleneck. This is Serve, Lead, Scale. From spiritual fumes to strategic expansion. I am Bishop Dr. Loretta Sanders, and I will see you next week.